Case closed. The Supreme Court has spoken and its verdict final. Doye Diru remains Bayelsa State Governor. The Apex Court dismissed APC and David Leon's application and fined the lawyers. And the Inter-Party Advisory Council, Nigeria political parties' umbrella body, is divided since the decision of the umpire INEC to deregister some of the parties. We hear some of their differences tonight. Hello everyone and welcome to the program. This is Politics Today live on Channels Television. I'm Sean Kimbali at Channels Television's global headquarters here in Lagos, Nigeria. It's a Wednesday edition of the show and we will drive you through this 1 hour to break down some of the top political stories in the land for you. So sit tight everyone and enjoy the ride with me right here. Let's first keep you abreast of what is happening with regards to the umbrella body of all Nigerian political parties in Nigeria called IPAC, the Inter-Party Advisory Council. It appears things are not going on well. It looks so much like there is no end in sight to the leadership crisis currently rocking the Inter-Party Advisory Council IPAC, as both the embattled chairman, Mr. Peter Ame, and Mr. Leonard Nzenwa continue to lay claim to the chairmanship seat of the political party's advisory group. So speaking at two separate news conferences today in Abuja, the factions gave counter directives to their state chapters, while those in the camp of Mr. Leonard Nzenwa direct members of IPAC in the state to appoint interim presiding officers and send in their names to the national body. The Peter Ame faction of IPAC asked state chapters to disregard such directives. The current crisis in IPAC started about 3 weeks ago after the Independent National Electoral Commission, INEC, registered 74 political parties, a situation that made some of the 18 surviving political parties who appoint new leadership for IPAC insisting that any member of a deregistered political party cannot be a member of IPAC.
The Inter-Management Committee, steering affairs of the 18 registered political parties in the country, will not detain itself to undertake crucial functions beholden to it to exercise towards promoting dialogue and adjudicating between and among the political parties and several stakeholders seeking to reach out and engage with registered political parties under the banner of IPAC. In furtherance of above, the state chapters of IPAC is hereby directed to amicably replicate the institution of an interim management committee to oversee the affairs of the council in their respective states pending when election is to be conducted.
The so-called press release today by the illegal committee and the instructions to state IPAC is tidy, fraudulent, unlawful, and absolutely illegal, and it should be totally discarded by all state IPAC across the federation. The 7-man committee is not known to IPAC. It's not known to IPAC code of conduct, and as such, the council is using this medium to instruct all executive members of IPAC across the states of federation to desist from taking such instructions. Take notice that the protected 7-man committee should be clearly guided that this kind of unlawful misconduct is punishable under the law of the federation.
Well, you have it there. One is hoping how this is going to be resolved. There's some other political stories that we are following for you aside. Our major story, perhaps the biggest story, politically speaking, in the land today, the Bayelsa governorship judgment from the Supreme Court. What it means, we'll break it down for you, show you, we'll break down the Supreme Court judgment and give you an understanding of what it means, then get the two major political parties involved talking on this one. But first, let's check out some of these other political stories for you.
The chairman and commissioners of the National Assembly Service Commission have been sworn in by President Muhammadu Buhari with a promise to work towards a more effective national legislature. The 12 officers took their oaths at a brief ceremony at the State House, Abuja. Also at the ceremony are the Vice President, Professor Yemi Oshibajo, the President of the Senate, Mr. Ahmed Lawan, and the Speaker of the House of Representatives, Mr. Femi Gbajabiamila. President Buhari had in December of last year forwarded the names of the Chairman, Ahmed Kadi Amshi, and members to the National Assembly. The National Assembly Service Commission is saddled with the responsibility of managing the workforce of the National Assembly. There seems to be a brewing in the National Union of Local Government Employees in Osun State as they are now divided over tenure elongation of the current executive members. The crisis intensifies as the State Executive Council, the highest decision-making body of the union, passed a vote of confidence on their president, Adegboruwa. But some members disagree with the tenure extension. The Imo State Governor, Hope Uzodinma, has urged Nigerians to imbibe the spirit of tolerance irrespective of ethnic and religious differences in order to foster peace and unity in the country. Governor Uzodinma made this known at the Government House in Owerri, the Imo State capital, while meeting with members and leaders of the Hausa community for the first time since he emerged as governor of the state. He says Nigeria remains one entity that is indivisible, irrespective of ethnic differences, and no matter where Nigerians reside, they should be tolerant, ensure peaceful coexistence, and contribute their own quota to the development of the area. He promised to work with the Hausa community in Imo to achieve his developmental plans for the state.
Thank you so much, everyone. Let's get started. But let's take you back just a moment for a second. Yesterday, we published a poll here at Channels Television on our website and on some of our social media platforms following a bill for an act to amend the Nigerian Constitution to extend immunity to cover presiding officers to legislative institutions in Nigeria, which has passed the second reading in the House of Representatives. And we asked you this question, and here it is. We asked you, should presiding officers in the National Assembly, like the Senate President and Speaker, enjoy immunity just like the President, the Vice President, governors, and their deputies? So the options there were, it is needed, it is unnecessary, I don't care, I'm indifferent. And we asked you yesterday to go there on our Twitter handle to participate in the poll. Let me show you the result of the poll and some of the things that you've said. So almost 4,000 people participated in the poll. Over 70% of those who polled said it is unnecessary. Well, the next stage for the bill is going to be the public hearing, which some of your views are going to be heard. Will this bill sail through? We'll find out. Those are some of your views there. Then our business for tonight, everyone. The much anticipated review by the Supreme Court has come to an end with some very strong positions today from the Apex Court, which was perhaps brutal, some people would say, in its verdict as it dismissed the application of the All Progressives Congress APC and its governorship candidate in Bayelsa State, Mr. David Leon, for lacking in merit. Justice Amina Oge, who read the court's decision, declared that it lacks the jurisdiction to review or vary its judgments and that the verdicts of the court are final. While noting that the applicants failed to point out errors, she emphasized that the judgment is final for all ages in the real sense and no court on earth can review it. According to the judge, there must be an end to litigation, and if this judgment is reviewed according to her, every disaffected litigant will bring similar applications, which would mean that the finality of a Supreme Court judgment is lost. Describing the applications as frivolous and vexatious, the court awarded the cost of 10 million naira to be personally paid by Mr. Lyon's counsel, Chief Afe Babalola, and the lawyer to the APC, Mr. Wole Olanipe, Consumer Advocate of Nigeria. The court also ruled that each of the lawyers must pay the 10 million naira to each of the three respondents, Governor Dioye Diri, his deputy, and the People's Democratic Party. So we broke it down for you to get a sense of what this means. Maybe you can find out, take a photo if you may, and so that you can look through what the position of the Supreme Court. It will for a long time be a precedent in law, what the Supreme Court has said today. If you look at it, one after the other, it said that the application lacked merit and the decision of the court is final. The applicants failed to point out errors. Some of the significant things that you can point out also is the fact that the judge said the application constitutes a gross abuse of judicial process. One thing that is also of importance that you need to know is the fact that the judge said the applications are frivolous and vexatious. Let me take you through this quote. Look at this quote. Perhaps also a very strong one today. The Supreme Court said, there must be an end. This is a quote now. There must be an end to litigation. Even if we review this judgment, every disaffected litigant will bring similar applications and the finality of the Supreme Court judgment will be lost. That is from the Supreme Court today. What does this mean for our democracy? One, our elections and the Nigerian judiciary. Let's get some perspectives, shall we? First is going to be a legal opinion from a senior advocate of Nigeria, Mr. Adegboruwa, who joins us from Lekki area of Lagos. And from Abuja, so we get two different views from the two major political parties involved. A former APC chairman in Rivers State, Mr. Davis Ikanya, who is also a chieftain of the APC, and the deputy national chairman of the PDP, Mr. Emmanuel Ogidi. Thank you so much, gentlemen, for coming. Let's get some of the legal views now from Mr. Adegboruwa. Mr. Adegboruwa, this is significant, isn't it? It is a major decision coming from the highest court in the land. What do you make of it?
Thank you. The decision of their lordships, the justices of the Supreme Court, is unassailable. It is courageous, and indeed represents the expectation of most members of the legal community. It will have amounted to judicial harakiri had the Supreme Court taken a decision today to reverse itself. I feel that it will amount to a barrier of the sacred institution if the door were to be opened to all disgruntled litigants to come back for a fresh bite at the cherry. And I said this because of the provisions of our Constitution, which established the Supreme Court, in particular, Section 235 of the Constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, which provides that without prejudice to the powers of the president or of the governor of a state, with respect to prerogative of mercy, no appeal shall lie to any other body or person from any determination of the Supreme Court. That is the section that validates the finality of decisions of the Supreme Court. Except to God, it should be unheard of that parties who have lost through open court should then be looking for means of coming through the back door to express their disenchantment with the judgment of the Supreme Court. And it will have portended great danger for our democracy, because all other cases that have been settled before now will find themselves back to the Supreme Court. Land cases of communities that have been accepted, commercial decisions, even husband and wife that have been separated by decision of the Supreme Court can go back to review. So I believe that the decision of their lordships is very sound, and I commend their sagacity and also their courage. And I believe that all those who still have similar applications pending before the Supreme Court should take a hint from what has been decided today to go and withdraw those applications. There is no basis for anybody to seek to review decisions in relation to election petitions. We cannot, as a nation, because of ordinary 4-year tenure, then rubbish and denigrate the most important institution of our democratic experience, which is the judiciary. And so it is important for us to sound the warning to politicians. Enough is enough. Enough damage has been done to the judiciary through politics, and we should have enough of it. People should be...
Mr. Adegboruwa, some of the implications of what has been done today, perhaps you can't find it any better in the country, anywhere, when it comes to jurisprudence or when it comes to the practice of law in the bar, the kind of lawyers that we had at the Supreme Court today, talking about the likes of Chief Afe Babalola, talking about Senior Advocate Tayo Yetubo, talking about Mr. Wale Olanipekun. But if you look at on this side of the divide, Mr. Wale Olanipekun and Chief Afe Babalola, what the Supreme Court has said today, finding them, is it Supreme Court showing that it was angry, or what could that, how would you interpret that body language or that decision of the Supreme Court when it says, you go and pay fine, not to the party involved, but you, the lawyers, pay fine of 10 million naira to each of those that are involved in the case?
It is not the first time the Supreme Court has descended heavily on legal practitioners who have led their clients to seek to abuse the process of court. And I must say that virtually all the legal practitioners involved in today's proceedings deserve our respect and adulation. And indeed, some of them are our mentors within the legal profession. But as you well know by now, justice is blind. He has no respect for status. He has no respect for position. He has no respect for age. Judges are to determine cases based on the merits of the facts before them. And I agree with their lordship that the application seeking to review the judgments of the Bayelsa State election petitions or judgment of the Supreme Court on Bayelsa State gubernatorial election had no basis in law at all. It was a case that originated from the Federal High Court. There was an appeal to the Court of Appeal, and there was a valid appeal to the Supreme Court. So to go back to that same court and be taunting them, to tell the justices that they had no jurisdiction, that they made errors based on Facebook data, based on emotions of politicians, I think that our learned seniors, with all due respect to them, saw it coming. There was enough handwriting on the wall for them to see that those applications could not go through. And I'm insisting that every other person who has similar applications, whether in relation to Zamfara, whether in relation to Imo, whether in relation to anywhere, should go and withdraw them. We cannot allow politicians to continue to lead us to abuse the institutions that produce us. And I believe enough is enough of this kind of image that you have brought to the judiciary through our own efforts as lawyers. And that's why I support the Supreme Court for descending heavily on the lawyers that led the politicians to try to push mud in the face of the court. They could not have done it better. And I think it's a lesson for all lawyers who may have similar ambition in future.
We will go on a break, Mr. Adegboruwa, but just in about 30 seconds, the Supreme Court can only by itself review itself when it deems fit. Is that what this all means today at the end of the day?
No, what this all means is to sound the note of finality, to say that there must be an end to litigation. We must get to a bus stop.
But, sorry, apologies, Mr. Adegboruwa. The Supreme Court has said that it's not infallible, but it's final. But it does mean that human beings are involved. It could make mistakes. But by the rule of the Supreme Court, sometimes it identifies that it could make error. So at what point can the Supreme Court review itself or reverse itself as the case may be?
We all know within our profession that once a decision has been given, it remains final. But when another opportunity arises in future, where similar facts have presented themselves before the court, you could ask the court to panel a full court of 7 justices to depart from their previous decision.
All right.
And you point out the errors, you point out the mistakes that are made in the past decision, but not for you to go back to say you are not satisfied with the decision given and that particular decision be overturned. Otherwise, every other person will come back to show... Right.
Mr. Adegboruwa, apologies to Button. We need to take a break at this moment because a lot of things are involved when we take these messages. But when we come back, we look deeper We've taken some legal perspective. We'll get some political perspective. What this means for our election, what this means for our democracy and Nigeria's politics. Don't go anywhere. We've just got started with the conversation. Plenty more to talk about, everyone. Thank you so much, everyone, for staying with us tonight on the program. So we're looking at what happened today and what went down. You can see behind me, it does look so much that the case has closed upon a statement of finality from the Supreme Court today. Let's give you a sense of what it all means through some of how we got an understanding of the Supreme Court's verdict today, saying that the application lacked merit and the decisions of the court are final. That the applicants failed to point out errors, stating that the judgment is final for all ages. The application constitutes a gross abuse of judicial process. The judgment is final in the real sense, and no court on earth can review the judgment. The applications are frivolous and vexatious. Awarded the cost of 10 million naira against the applicants to be personally paid by their counsel. The counsels of the APC and Mr. Leon are to each pay Governor Joye Diri, his deputy, and the PDP the same 10 million naira. And I actually brought out this quote, which gives us a sense of where we're coming from and what the implication of today's judgment means altogether. And I quote, "There must be an end to litigation. Even if we review this judgment, every disaffected litigant will bring similar applications and the finality of Supreme Court judgments will be lost." And we have been dwelling on some of the implication and the outcome of today. Case closed. What does this mean for our democracy, elections, and judiciary? Let's get back to the conversation. Mr. Adegboruwa, a senior advocate of Nigeria, has been speaking with us on the legal perspective on this. He's drawn our attention to Section 235. How much Nigeria politics can give us understanding of the law, even if you are not gone to law school? And from our Abuja studio, two chieftains of the two major parties involved, Mr. Davis Ikaya, a former chairman of the APC in Rivers State, an APC chieftain, and Mr. Emmanuel Ogidi is the deputy national chairman of the PDP. Thank you so much, gentlemen, for coming on. Let's switch to our Abuja studio and let's turn to the politicians now and get their view on what has happened. Let me begin with Mr. Ikaya. Your party got the bad side of the law today. The Supreme Court verdict did not come in your favor. For you and your party, a bad one, not a good one. You lost that, and the second time you have lost again. What does this mean?
Well, thank you, Sean. For me, it's a sad day. For my party, it's also a sad day. But the Supreme Court has introduced something today which every political party will take from. They have established that their decision is final and that it is final for all ages. That means that when once Supreme Court has made a pronouncement on any issue, one should take that as the final position. Sad as it is for us in APC, for Bayelsa people, for Nigerians, but that is the verdict of the Supreme Court.
It's a technical knockout for your party. Bloody nose for the APC, and the APC particularly in Bayelsa State. Some people will say this was what your party has cost for itself. Do you agree?
Well, you know that election is a process. Nobody foresaw that there will be this kind of technical knockout. And you'll agree with me that it is not also peculiar to APC. But like I said last time, every political party will now learn to do proper sanitation in-house before presenting candidates. And even during elections, we should be careful so that we don't get this kind of bashing. Well, this one actually takes us a little back. It is the law, but when it comes to what the people actually want, you discover that sometimes it's different from what the position of the law is. That's what we are suffering in the case of Bayelsa now. So I think that my political party and other political parties should take steps to allow pure democracy take place in the process of selecting aspirants and then candidates for the party.
Was it a lack of due process? How did your party allow this to slip?
Well, Shehu, you also know that this Bayelsa governorship is not the only election that my party has undertaken. We have contested several elections from the presidency, the various House of Assemblies, various local government councils, and all that. So you can just consider that this is one of those ones that Supreme Court has said we didn't do a proper job. So that's what it is now.
Do you think that this is a failure of leadership in your party?
I don't think it's a failure of leadership because you can't judge leadership by just one event. The Bayelsa governorship election is just one election. We contested, in Bayelsa, we also had people who contested to the House of Reps, to Senate, and other elections. So I don't think that you can just crucify the leadership of the party because of one event. We have 36 states and the Federal Capital Territory in Nigeria, and we have won in majority of the states of this country. And in the National Assembly, we're also having majority, you know. So you can't say it's failure of leadership, but definitely it's a mistake by the leadership. But it's not a failure of the leadership.
Let's ask Chief Ogidi now. For your party, it must be some celebration in your camp. I see it because that is your own region. You are directly in charge of Bayelsa State. You are the chair there for the South-South. This is a technical victory for your party. It's not a popular one in the technical term, if you put it that way. What would be the immediate reaction of your party on this?
Sure, thank you very much. First, let me correct, I'm the National Vice Chairman, SASA, not Deputy National Chairman. Well, first of all, we must give thanks to God Almighty, because it's God that gives victory. We play our part, but God will give the victory. So we give the glory to God Almighty who has given us this victory. Yes, we're happy. We thank God for that. But we still have a responsibility now. We need to go back and ensure that we deliver dividend democracy to the people of Bayelsa State. Yes, we're happy. We thank God.
Yeah, so I was, part of that question was that it was a technical victory, not a popular victory. How does this come to your party when you know the mandate that you have was a technical mandate, not a popular mandate?
I don't know what you mean by technical mandate or victory. You see, first, I'm a Christian, and power belongs to God. It's only the place that God wants to rule that we rule. So you don't talk about technical or not technical. If you read the Bible very well, Psalm 62, verse 11, say, power belongs to me, and I'll give it to who I'll give it to. So you don't bring technicality when it comes to power.
So
just
this
for
is
information.
Chief Ogidi, are you saying this is a hand of God, that this is a victory from God?
Yes, of course it's the hand of God. In everything we do. In everything we do is the hand of God. Because you're holding the power on behalf of God. You see, the position of a governor of a state has power of life and death. Because when the judge passes the judgment, it's the governor that will sign. So it's a similarity, it's a power. Yes, we as politicians will play everything, we'll do everything by the rules. We'll go for election, but it's God that decides who will win. I want us politicians to understand that.
So God rejected APC and God ordained PDP. Is that what you're saying, Chief Ogidi?
I just said God gave us victory. I would like to stop there. Okay,
so in all of this, from what we have seen today in court, it is not only the PDP, the APC that has gone to court. Your party has gone to court in Imo. And if you heard what the court has said today, are you worried of what may come out of the Imo case?
No. You see, if you listen to the judgment today, when they were ruling, they said so many things which I want you to understand. The case of we have a case in the case of that of Imo. We're talking about an overvoting. which is against the rule. At best, they would have said, go for a rerun. So those are the things we pointed out. Well, it's not like this case. It's very much different, very different.
I mean, your party has come out to protest, gone to some international institutions to say our judiciary is in a mess. You said, oh, things are not good. But what is the position of your party now? Is the judiciary a fantastic institution based on what the Supreme Court said today?
Well, what we're trying to do, we're trying to make sure that the judiciary is given its independence. If you look at it, this whole thing started from the removal of Onoge. You see, the executive, they have always tried to whittle down the powers of the legislature and the judiciary. And if you check properly, the legislature is the most effective that determines democracy. That's why you have all the members in the Senate and the House of Rep, then in the state, the Assembly. But this government of APC, as you see today, they have tried to destroy what we call the independence of the various arms of government. That's what we as a party were trying to do. We said, don't destroy, don't bring down the institutions. The institution has checks and balances. So for us today, that the judiciary has been able to maintain what they are maintaining, we thank God for it. That's what we are doing. We're not condemning judiciary at all. We know they have been strong, and they're getting out of it. I'm very happy for that.
Chief Ikanya, do you agree with what Chief Ogidi has said about our judiciary and his position that it was God that wanted Mr. Diri in Bayelsa?
Yes, I agree that whoever God wants to give a position, God is God. God is almighty. So God can give, God can make anybody governor, God can make anybody president, God can also remove anybody whenever God wants to remove anybody. But I agree with that. But I also want to say that it's wrong for my friend Ogidi to say that this government is twisting the judiciary. No government has ever twisted the judiciary in this country more than the last PDP government in this country. We saw when an appeal court judge was just sacked with ignominy and so many things. So I don't want to talk about that. But what we are saying is that the Supreme Court has said they are final. Now, that is the situation of the law. Every political party, my party, the PDP, no one should go on the street anymore when Supreme Court gives judgment. Like he has started saying now, oh, in the other case, it is question of overvoting. In this other case, it is question of undervoting. That is not what the Supreme Court said. They said they cannot be visiting the issues every time when they have given judgment. So let PDP learn to obey the judgment. If it was PDP that had this Supreme Court judgment now, they would have been on the street. In fact, they would have gone to embassy of Liberia to come and sit in our Supreme Court. That's very funny. I think that we should also learn to accept when it is bitter. It's not only when it is sweet that we should take. When it is bitter. Today, it is bitter for APC. And we are sad about it. But that is the verdict of the Supreme Court. And the Supreme Court said it's final. So in another time, when it is the turn of APC to smile or the turn of any other party to smile, the party that is taking the bitter pill should not also take the Supreme Court to the cleaners. These are people that said our judges are like this, our judges are like that in the Supreme Court. Today, they have judgment. All of a sudden, is good for them. So I think that we should allow institutions to function in this country. Then I also want to add that now that everybody knows that Supreme Court is the final, the Supreme Court themselves should also try, as they have been doing, to give us judgments that will actually be final. Because there are certain judgments that when you see it, even the SANs and other judges will say, yes, this one is actually final. So that when you see a Supreme Court judgment that is final, you know that, yeah, this one is really, really final. And I want the Supreme Court to stand also. You know, that lawyer said it was a courageous judgment. I agree with him. Let the Supreme Court continue to give courageous judgments in all cases.
Let's bring back Chief Ogidi to what you have said. And in reacting to what you have said, Chief Ogidi, let me remind you of what the statement I quoted earlier from the Supreme Court saying, there must be an end to litigation even if we review this judgment. Every disaffected litigant will bring in similar applications and the finality of the Supreme Court judgment will be lost. Is your party thinking of withdrawing any other review? Because you remember that your party threatened that you are going to review the presidential election judgment.
I like that show. Well, like you said, you know, we just got a judgment today. And the National Working Committee, we have emergency NEC tomorrow. We're going to discuss some of these things. But I'm happy my friend is saying that they should allow institutions to work independently, which is very good. That has always been the position of PDP. But this APC government have been destroying the institution. And there's no time did we say we're against the judges. No. We just said allow that institution to function on its own. Encourage them to function. That has been our stand. And we didn't just go to the street. We went to the street in an orderly form. We did not threaten. Whereas, you know what happened when they were threatening? No, you don't threaten. We're very peace-loving. Well, if you said we remove judges in that time, is that why you should remove or not get? No, don't say. Let's not go into that.
No, there was a criminal.
But we will always ensure as a political party that we will deliver on our promises. We maintain that the rule of law should be allowed to flow. And all institutions, not just one, not just the legislature, the executive, all institutions must be seen to be doing their work with the fear of God. If there's no fear of God, then we're going to have a problem in this country. So we accept it in good faith because that is the only way out of it.
But are you withdrawing? Is there a possibility of your party withdrawing the applications to review some other cases because of what has happened?
For now,
today?
we have not said anything because the judgment just came in today.
Yeah, but I just read part of the judgment. I just read part of the judgment saying that, look, we cannot be reviewing our judgment because the Supreme Court is a final. There's a finality in our judgment. So isn't that a signal that any other application for review is endangered?
We are still going to talk with our lawyers and say, look, what has happened today, does it affect our case? Or what do they think? They will advise us.
Our
lawyers will advise us.
But from what you think, from where you are seated right now, and the fact that you probably have known today, does it make sense for the PDP to go ahead or the APC to go ahead in any review of the Supreme Court judgments?
If we have made it, why not? You see, look, what they have just done today, they've tested it. Which we are reasonable people. We have seen what has happened. We will now review our position. I'm talking now as an individual. I'm not talking about a party yet. We will have to review it. And once there's a merit, of course, we'll go on it. After all, there was a fine on the lawyers. If it's not good, if there's no merit, our lawyers will say, look, we have no money to pay.
All right, I like that.
But I do know we have merit.
Okay, so we'll go on another break because we need to pay some bills. And when we come back, we allow Mr. Ikanya to respond, and we'll get some of the other responses from Mr. Adegboruwa, the senior advocate on the program tonight. Don't go anywhere. Please, we'll be right back. Thank you so much, everyone, for staying with us. You know what? Politics is like sports. Some people will win and others will lose. As we speak, in the camp of the APC, might not be good news. In the camp of the PDP in Bayelsa, it might be jubilation. Some animals may have lost their lives and perhaps found themselves in the cooking pot because there will be festivities there. But perhaps some people are already re-strategizing and looking at what is happening. And some lawyers will be smiling to the banks, based on the verdict of the Supreme Court. Let's get back to my panel tonight on the program. Some chieftains of the two major parties involved, Mr. Ikaya, an APC chieftain, and Chief Ogidi, and also a PDP chieftain. Thank you so much for joining us. Before we go to the senior advocate, let me quickly ask you to react to what Chief Ogidi has said. Mr. Ikaya, if you quickly can react to what he said before we went on that break.
Yes. Yes, thank you, Sean. I think that Ogidi has not repented from the spirit of PDP that got the country to where we were before APC came in, and APC is trying to clean up the place. I can assure you, if it was a PDP government that this Supreme Court gave this judgment today, what they would have done to the Supreme Court, you will not be able to imagine. But today you have a disciplined government in place. That is why Supreme Court is final and everywhere is quiet. You've not seen us on the street. He is laying a very dangerous background to what PDP is likely to do in the case of Imo, should the Supreme Court affirm their position that their decision is final. He's talking about, he's telling us what Supreme Court should say. He's talking about overvoting, talking about undervoting. Meanwhile, Supreme Court has said that if they keep reviewing cases, if they allow politicians to keep bringing one point or the other, that there will be no final judgment. There will be no end to any litigation. I think that the Supreme Court should be allowed to do their job. I think that PDP should allow the Supreme Court to do their job. And I think also that PDP should begin to learn democracy. They should copy the example of APC to allow democracy to strive, to allow the judiciary to do their work and make their pronouncements, so that we don't do our work as contestants of election and also meddle into the issues of the judiciary. I think that PDP should begin to learn.
All right. Chief Ikaya, just a moment. Just a moment. Let me get Mr. Adegboruwa back. Thank you so much, Mr. Adegboruwa, for staying with us. Two things that I'd like to get your attention and get your legal perspective on tonight is the fact that what this means for our election. And so we've seen time and again when we go to the polls, but the decision of who becomes, who takes that position is determined in the courtroom. And so no longer do we have a situation that largely popular votes are being determined from the field. At some point now, it's now being determined in the courtroom. How bad could this mean for our democracy?
I think part of the lessons we can take from the pronouncement of the Supreme Court today is for our leaders and politicians to go back home to the drawing board and make conscious effort to sanitize the political space, especially process leading to the choice of candidates and indeed the election proper, the primaries of the political parties and the conduct of election. If we are able to achieve peaceful and credible elections, we'll have less cases in court because the contestants will see clearly and convincingly that the system was fair, just, credible, and peaceful. The other lesson is this. The president said that he would like to leave a legacy of proper electoral conduct before he leaves office. There's so much time between now and 2023 to dust the Electoral Act and amend it in such a way that we can achieve transparent elections. If we leave this system till 2023, cases will come back to the courts. The politicians and our leaders should also take the third lesson, which is that there's need to invest and fund the judiciary. Because when they discovered that there was rot in the judiciary and their cases were being delayed, they amended the Constitution for their own selfish interest and specify a number of days to hear their own cases only. Now you can imagine, Shehu, election petitions in respect of presidential election, over 1,000 documents were tendered, hundreds of witnesses were called. How do you compel human beings to assess these documents and the testimonies of the witnesses within specified days and be able to properly analyze and intellectualize them? So you continue to have errors. You continue to have mistakes.
Ms. Adegboruwa, this is a very critical, you are not only a lawyer, a senior lawyer at that, with so many years at the bar, you are also a civil rights activist. As a lawyer, do you perceive any form of meddling in the affairs of the judiciary? Do you think that the judiciary, as it's presently constituted, is independent?
Not at all. I have no doubt in my mind, and is not limited to the current government. Generally, the history of collaboration between the executive and the judiciary is for the executive to interfere in the activities of the judiciary. And the reason is very simple, Shehu. An effective judiciary is a check on lawlessness, it's a check on impunity. The people who take other people's land, the people who lock up citizens in custody is the executive. So when you have a judiciary that is bold, courageous, independent, fearless, and well-funded, you get a society that is orderly. Big men are called to order. Impunity is nailed. So it is in nature of the executive to continue to breathe down on the judiciary. And in this particular administration, you will see what has happened in the past years when houses of judges were raided at night. You will see what happened to the Chief Justice of the Federation. You will see what has happened to several judges in terms of intimidation. But I know that is not peculiar to this particular regime. But all I say is that the Chief Justice of Nigeria himself, the current one, has said that it is not fair for judges to go to the executive begging for funds, because he who pays the piper will dictate the tune. So when we have a situation when judiciary is not independent financially, is not independent in terms of the discharge of his responsibilities, you can't have a free judiciary.
That's a fabulous point that you have made, Ms. Adegboruwa. A note of warning to the nation, not only to the people in power, to everyone, the essence of the independence of the judiciary. Thank you so much, Mr. Adegboruwa, Senior Advocate of Nigeria. Let me get the final and closing moment thoughts of my other guests in Abuja studio. We have just about 40 seconds or so to close the program, and I need your help so that you can give your final thoughts in 20 seconds each. Chief Ogidi, you go first. Your final thoughts on this for tonight and going forward.
Well, you see, I've been vindicated by what the lawyer just said. You see what has happened, what we've done to the judiciary. Now, when he was talking, I was just laughing. Only a few days ago, the APC went and attacked Justice Odili's house here in Abuja. What are we talking about? The violence that APC has been given in Bayelsa, Kogi, even the River State where it comes from. So, I don't know what to say, but you see, you had all what he had preferred. If we can have the electoral bill amended, there will be less of violence. We want this legislature and the president to sign off on it. Once he can sign off on it, maybe history will refer to him. But as for this government, they have destroyed the legacy we had built.
Chief Ikaya, your turn now.
Yes, thank you, Shehu. I think Ogidi has missed it. From Obasanjo down to Jonathan, it's been terrible for the judiciary in this country. It's been terrible for most institutions, including the Central Bank of Nigeria. This is the only administration that has been humane, that has allowed institutions to do their thing. I think that we should allow the judiciary to do their job. I think that we should support the judiciary to exist. I think also that we should allow the judgment of the Supreme Court to stand. It doesn't matter who the judgment favors. Next time, it could be our turn. So PDP should also learn to accept the verdict of the Supreme Court. Thank you.
I must sincerely thank my partner tonight on the program, Chief David Zikaya, former chairman of the APC in Rivers State and an APC chieftain, and also Chief Emmanuel Ogidi, the Deputy Vice Chairman National Vice Chairman of the PDP South, and Mr. Adegboruwa, Senior Advocate of Nigerian Rights Activists. Thank you so much for your thought tonight. And for those of you who participated in the poll and also tweeted and sent your comment, thank you. We saw some of them. Thank you so much for watching, everyone. I'm Sean Kimale. Bye-bye.